Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Now in today's video we are going to be taking a look at a piece of software called KernelEx, which is a open source compatibility layer for both Windows 98 and Windows ME. Now some of you longtime viewers of mine may remember a few years ago in 2015 I did a mini video series called Windows ME in 2015, and the purpose of that video series was to take a look at Windows ME, and even though it was a 16-year-old operating system at the time, to see how it performed in the modern day. And one of the pieces of software that I used to accomplish that was this program called KernelEx. And as I said, what this program basically does is adds a extra compatibility layer onto either Windows 98 or Windows ME, and it allows you to install some more up-to-date programs. Now, this is not going to allow you to install the latest and greatest software that supports Windows 10, but if you install this piece of software, you will be able to install some Windows 2000 and Windows XP programs that do not natively support Windows 98 or Windows ME. And part of the inspiration for this video comes from a comment that I received recently on my How Internet Explorer Became Apple's Default Browser video by this guy, Troy Van Heer. And he basically asked me, he left a very nice comment, which I do want to say a huge thank you to you for, watching the video and leaving this, very nice comment that you left. But he basically asked me to take a look at KernelEx and take a look at how to install it, where to get everything from, and that was part of the inspiration for me wanting to do this video today. So a huge thank you to you, Troy Van Heer, once again. And let's just jump into it. So I have this Windows 98 VM set up behind me right here, and I do have the KernelEx website opened up in the VM here. Now, as always, I'm going to have all of the links down below in the video description to all of the software packages you're going to need, which is really just this one, as well as some additional information on KernelEx. So I have it pulled up in this VM here, and it's very simple. All you have to do is just go down to the download button right here. And I've been having trouble with Opera. It does not want to load the page for whatever reason, so I just copied the file over from my host computer, which you can do by either installing VMware Tools or VirtualBox Guest Editions, and it just will allow you, at least with VMware, to just drag and drop files from your host computer to the VM. So I've already done that here, and I have KernelEx right here, as well as some software packages that we're going to be taking a look at. Before I go ahead and install KernelEx, I want to demonstrate kind of that these two pieces of software will not work under Windows 98 without VMware Tools, or not VMware Tools, without KernelEx installed. So I have here a version of OpenOffice 3.2.1 and a copy of Mozilla Firefox, the extended service release. And when I go ahead and run the Firefox package, you see it just comes up with this blank error message that literally doesn't say anything. So obviously there's some sort of error. The application does not want to run the installer, so we're going to have to click on OK. And same with OpenOffice here. OpenOffice just basically lets you know that, hey, you need to upgrade your Windows version because we don't support this old version of Windows. And it's going to also give you this error as well. So both of these packages do not work, at least without KernelEx. Let's go ahead and install KernelEx here. And it's a very simple, just very easy install. You just have to agree to the license agreement and go ahead and install the piece of software. And now it prompts you to install Microsoft Layer for Unicode that is required. So we're going ahead and click on yes to install that. And we're going to agree to the Microsoft Layer Unicode license agreement. And that is it. That is as simple as it gets. And what you want to do, and this is very important, is to enable the KernelEx extensions for all applications. So go ahead and do that. Click on next, and you want to reboot your machine. Alright, so we are back. The VM has successfully restarted, and we are now upon the first boot up after we installed KernelEx. We get this nice little message here saying that KernelEx has been successfully installed and is now enabled for all applications. To make new applications run or fix old applications crash, you may need to go to the KernelEx tab in the properties of the application or its shortcut. And it gives you a link to the KernelEx wiki, which is a very useful resource, which we're going to be taking a look at in a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and click on OK to exit out of that. Now, when it was talking about that KernelEx properties pane in the application preferences, what it was talking about was if we go ahead into an application and right click on it and go to properties, there's this new tab over here called KernelEx, and when we click on that, we've got three different options. We have use default compatibility options with KernelEx enabled. We have the option to entirely disable KernelEx and just run this application as if KernelEx was not installed, and we also have the option to specify a specific compatibility mode. And that is, well, when we go to this option and go to this drop-down menu, you can see that we can choose all the way back to Windows 95 and all the way up to Windows Server 2008 Service Pack 1. So basically up to Windows Vista. Now, this is not guaranteeing or saying that all applications will work with KernelEx, because that's definitely not the case. There are definitely some applications, like we'll get into in a minute, that will not work even with KernelEx installed. So we're going to go with the default option of use the default compatibility options that KernelEx has specified for us, and we're going to click on OK. And now when we run this OpenOffice package, now remember before without KernelEx how it just crashed and said that we need to update our Windows version. Now when we run this, you'll see that it begins to load the setup. And this will basically allow us to install OpenOffice 3.2 just as if we were running this under Windows XP or Windows Vista, a supported operating system. So we're going to go ahead and unpack this archive. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, OpenOffice 3.2, that isn't the latest version of OpenOffice. Well, you'd be right. The latest version is 4.1.5, but anything after OpenOffice 3.2, at least according to the official KernelEx wiki, will not work under or with KernelEx installed. So 3.2 is the latest version that is supported. So as I was saying at the very beginning, this isn't some magic piece of software that allows you to install the latest and greatest software that you would run on Windows 10 in Windows 98. That's just not possible. But what it does enable you to do is get software that you wouldn't normally be able to get under Windows 98. For example, OpenOffice 3.2, that's not supported by Windows 98, but if we have KernelEx, it is. And that is a great segue into the next topic I want to talk about, and that is the KernelEx wiki. Now, the KernelEx wiki is accessed by going to the wiki tab on the KernelEx website, and essentially what this is a database of tested software that is basically tested to work under KernelEx. So if we go to the compatibility database right here, so on this wiki right here, there are 56 pages of different pieces of software that people have tested with KernelEx. And if we scroll down here to the O category and go to openoffice.org, this is a whole wiki entry for openoffice.org. It basically tells you information about it. It tells you where to download the supported version of OpenOffice that works under KernelEx. And down here at the bottom, under the Known Issues tab, it says versions 3.3 and higher don't run. There is no known workaround. So it says that the tested release is 3.2.1, which is what that I have installing in the VM right now. And it tells you the KernelEx release that it is supported with. So this is basically a great resource for you to go to learn about what applications and what versions of those applications work under KernelEx. So we've got a ton of different application entries here. We have, if we go to the M category, which is right over here, we've got Mozilla Firefox, and it tells us a version of Mozilla Firefox, Firefox 10.012 ESR from January 2013, which work under KernelEx. Now, this application right here is Firefox version 60.1 ESR. So this one, when I start to run it, you'll see that it looks like it starts to work, but it will eventually crash and basically say that it's not supported. So this is an example of some applications that you might think are going to work under KernelEx, but you can see right here, it just doesn't. And this was because that I got a later version than KernelEx supports out of the box. So you can see that OpenOffice 3.2 has been successfully installed. So we're going to go ahead and just click on finish here. And now we can run openoffice.org just like any other application. So here we go. We can go into text document here. We can maximize this window once it loads a text document. And there we go. Now we're in openoffice.org writer. And we can, type out a document and get our work done, do whatever we need to do. So there you have it. That is basically a quick little overview of this wonderful piece of software called KernelEx, which I can definitely see a lot of you guys who have older computers, older Windows 98 or Windows ME machines that you want to install some later versions of software on, like a web browser or like an Office suite. to still use that computer for some basic tasks, this program will definitely aid you in helping to do that. So if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it in the near future, definitely be sure to give this video a thumbs up and be sure to get subscribed down below if you haven't already. Also be sure to drop me a comment letting me know your thoughts on KernelEx and if you've ever used this or if you're planning to use it because of this video. I always love hearing what you guys have to say. And as always guys, I want to thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next video.